Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to see you all. And today, in our department seminar, we are honored to host Hannah-Lea Wasserfuhr, who is a PhD candidate at the Hochschule for Jewish Studies in Heidelberg. She's currently working on her PhD project, Industrial Production and Marketing of Jewish ritual objects during the imperial period and Weimar Republic, funded by the Ismar Elbogen Scholarship Program of the Ernst Ludwig Ehrlich Scholarship Foundation and the Leo Beck Institute in New York, where she spent time as a visiting research fellow last year. Previously, she studied art history, and she holds a master's degree in Jewish museology. And the title of her talk today is Pleasing the Bourgeois Customers, Innovations of Jewish Ritual Objects in Germany at the turn of the 20th century. So, Hannah-Lea, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. And thanks for the invitation today. And I will start right away. Currently my researcher's desk is covered in piles of literature on Jewish ritual objects from around 1900. I research for modern creations of Jewish ritual items or commodities for Jewish customers around 1900 as a part of my PhD project, where I tried to get an insight into the realm of mass-produced ceremonial objects in Germany from the late 19th century to the 1930s. Part of this project is tracing and researching the companies which produce Jewish ceremonial items, the cooperation of companies, and the trade networks. This method allows me to get an insight into the iconography of mass-produced items and the history of the material culture of German Judaism. Besides, the objects are also material representatives of Judaism, and therefore my research also aims at getting a better picture of the visibility of Jewish life within the consumer's market and the world of advertising. In doing so, I want to get a broader picture of Jewish daily consumers' life before the Shoah and retell the story of some too long forgotten and destroyed companies that used to have a significant reputation in Germany. Like this, I hope that in the long run, some of the orphaned objects in today's museum's collections are reconnected to their history and can retell their stories. But today's topic is slightly more specific. I want to talk about newly created must-have items. Several of these ritual objects show that they are very much a part of the German bourgeois culture. Besides, to some extent, these items support the conclusion that companies discovered the Jewish community as potential customers in the time of social mobility and increasing mass production. As being of minor importance religious-wise and not great work of craftsmanship, these items are not very well researched by now. Hence, I'm presenting hypotheses and welcome further ideas and discussions. In the following talk, I want to take a closer look at challah knives, Seder compendiums, Hanukkah lamps, and Yahrzeit lamps. One key factor for the invention of new Jewish ritual objects are obviously the surrounding fashions and innovations. That's why several items originate from fashions of tableware, or at least derive their design from these changing fashions. The first one of these innovations, as I suppose, are the challah knives. An item which is strictly speaking not necessary, and to some extent, and in some minhagim, even forbidden. Not using a challah knife is in line with the Sephardic tradition, as one breaks the bread. This tradition is based on Mishnah Torah, Brachot 7.4, Shulchan Aruch Orchaim, Siman 274, where it is explicitly said that one ought to break the bread. Additionally, the table is meant to represent the altar in the temple. Hence, there is no place for a huge weapon-like knife at this table, according to Brachot 55a. Besides, there is no proof of the existence of challah knives until the late 19th century. It is not included in mid-19th century sources. For example, it is not mentioned in housekeeping and cookbooks, like this one from 1865 by Rebecca Wolf. She describes the table setting for a Friday evening, but a special knife to cut the challah is missing in her description. A similar observation can be made from genre paintings of Moritz Daniel Oppenheim. In these two examples, we witness a Shabbat afternoon with the chalot still on the table, but again without any specific knife. Nevertheless, there are several preciously designed challah knives. Some of them simply carry an engraved blessing, like this one from the still existing company Koch and Bergfeld. You can see their hallmarking up here. These engravings might have, though, commissioned after the acquisition, but the catalogue of the Lazarus Posen Witwe jeweler shows that also engraved examples were already sold as challah knives. By the way, the second one down here, 7505, is the one we saw earlier by Koch and Bergfeld, based on their Spaten cutlery design, meaning you could have your challah knife fitting to the rest of your cutlery. Others, though, are obviously designed to be challah knives. This one in the collection of the Frankfurt Jewish Museum was also sold by Lazarus Posen Witwe. Its handle was produced by using a forging die to press the silver. Hence, the forging die had to be produced and had no other usage. This is an example of a forging die reprinted in the Stempelbuch, a collection of forging die prints, by the silverware company Wilhelm Binder from Schwäbisch Gmünd around 1920. It shows an imprint of die number 11,562, their challah knife handle with the same Birkat Hashem hi ta'ashir. Hence, these knives were already designed to be challah knives from the start and not turned into one by adding an engraved blessing after the purchase. Other companies went even further and designed a pictorial program with chalot, kiddush cup, and menorah. The company who produced this example was based in Düsseldorf and called Silberwarenfabrik Franz Bahner AG. Well, AG stands for limited. In 1917, the company was bought by the Mansfeld Limited and their hallmarks changed. You can see both examples on the left. That's how one can date the second version of the same challah knife to after 1917. The later version shows an important additional marking saying Ges, which stands for gesetzlich geschützt. That means the knife's design has been protected by a utility patent around 1917. To protect your design is an expression of the novelty of an item, a way to prevent copyright infringement, and a marketing strategy to set your product apart from others. When Bahner registered their challah knife with a patent office a little before 1917, the item probably was a novelty piece but gaining popularity. Another elaborate challah knife is by the company Felix Horowitz and designed by his brother Leo. Their father was the Rabbi Markus Horowitz in Frankfurt, and here it is most interesting to note that he additionally incorporated the ending of the Chamotzi blessing, which is here at the end. This knife was probably exhibited at a conference of the Society for the Advancement of the Wissenschaft des Judentums in Frankfurt in 1914. As you can see, it is mentioned here in the newspaper article as Berches Messer. So in light of these examples, we may wonder when the challah knife started to become a thing. We already could fix some dates ranging between 1914 and 1920. But if we take one step back, we can discover another method to date the emergence of the challah knife. A challah knife is, first of all, a bread knife. And of course, also the bread knife has a history of its own, which provides us with crucial insights. Several German and one Austrian company claim the invention of the bread knife or the serrated knife. One of them supposedly presented a bread knife at the Chicago World Fair in 1893, the company Dieck from Esslingen, close to Stuttgart. The other two, who claim the invention of the serrated wave-like bread knife, which is the knife you see below here, around 1930, are Hack from Steyr in Austria and Güde from Solingen. The earliest bread knife, not challah knife, advertisement in the German Jewish newspapers I could find were by the Solingen company Feist, a Jewish family business, in 1904. You can see it up here on the left. Meaning the invention of a specific bread knife probably dates around 1900. The name Barches knife, though, turns up in the advertisement around 1911. Here's one of the earliest examples I could find from Jakob Brandeis in Breslau. Obviously, these advertisements are only samples and they cannot provide us with a definite date. Yet they give us a good idea, which is supported by the examples of challah knives I introduced before. So challah knives date from around 1910 and became very popular within a few years and even entered the Ashkenazi minhag of today. Maybe all of this has also to do with the big tradition of Barches in Germany. All these special types of chalot, from Butterbarches, Wasserbarches, Sudebarches, and all the regional specialities, and also made of potato flour. On top, all of it is perhaps based on the proverbial German love for bread. The illustration on the right by Brandeis, in the Brandeis advertisement, takes us to another item I want to discuss: the Seder compendium or table centerpiece. The Seder table centerpieces are a similar object for the Jewish home. Again, I refer to Rebecca Wolf for the start. For the Seder table, she describes a first bowl or plate with the matzot in a folded napkin. On top, there is another bowl with all the Seder components except for the charoset, which is put in a separate bowl next to the plate. This is all in line with the arrangement described in the Shulchan Aruch, Siman 118. 3 matzot should be placed upon the dish and covered with a nice cloth. Near that, towards the right hand, the shank bone should be placed, the egg toward his left hand, the bitter herbs on which the benediction will be pronounced in the center, the haroset below the shank bone, and the karpas below the egg, and the bitter herbs to be eaten with the matzot in the center. Importantly, neither the Shulchan Aruch nor Wolf's description contain a trace of one item for all the Seder components, like the cabinet-formed compendiums, which were massively advertised in papers, and as well in the already mentioned catalog by the Lazarus Posen Company, which you can see down here. Each of these models were possible to get with a curtain, like it is on the left, or with a metal door, like it is on the right. So how did these pieces become fashionable? I suggest that the Seder compendiums are overall based on the fashion of centerpieces or épernets, and hence originate in the first half of the 19th century. At the first sight, these items might not have a lot in common. The fashions of épernets or centerpieces is closely tied to the different fashion of serving courses. Within the 19th century, the service à la française changed to the service à la russe. The French style of serving meant that every component of one course was put on the table at once in an own dish. Each course needed the same number of components as the one before. It might be familiar in a very small scale version from the modern family dinner. In Urbain Dubois' cookbook from 1872, which was the first edition, he published both types of service. The service à la française on the left, this one here, shows several dishes on the table, although the central plate, the surtout, carrying a candlestick, condiments, fruits, and desserts is still empty, and the personal plates and cutlery are missing. The service à la russe on the right-hand side meant that the courses were brought to the table already served on plates separately, as it is still common today in fine dining. This new way of serving a meal brought with it that one didn't need much space for several small bowls and dishes. Hence, the extra space on the table was filled with even more exuberant decorative centerpieces. This development in table manners might have influenced the change from Seder plates as several small dishes, like Rebecca Wolf described them, to a big decorative Seder compendium. Especially this key item on the left, sold at Sotheby's and Greenstein's, which dates around 1820 from Berlin, shows its origin in centerpieces very clearly. It is designed as a classicistic temple and might have been later altered to a Seder compendium. As the shell-like dishes are merely hooked on, they are easily removed. Hence, the Seder centerpiece might serve dual purpose as a regular centerpiece. The one on the right below in this article is described as Tafelaufsatz für den Seder, so table centerpiece for the Seder, and is from Vienna, mid-19th century. It is part of an article by Erich Töplitz from 1931 about all kinds of Seder items from the collection of the Frankfurt Museum für Jüdische Altertümer and private collections in Frankfurt. This one has only one center compartment resembling salt cellars of its time. Probably it is for the maror. The difference to the above shown Meissen porcelain plate dating around 1800 is very obvious. Erich Töplitz argues that the luxurious opulence of Seder centerpieces was only possible because Jews were allowed to leave the crowdedness of the ghettos. As this piece needs space, the families didn't have before. Hence, they could allow themselves to have some opulent item to use only twice a year after settling outside the ghettos. Another connection to centerpieces is an alternative term used in advertisement. While some refer to Seder Schüsseln, so bowls, others call them Seder Etagere. as you can see up here in the advertisement by Schwab from Frankfurt. Meaning the noble and upper class idea of great dinners with decorative centerpieces trickled down to the Jewish bourgeoisie for the Seder evening. After leaving the ghettos, if we follow Toplet's argument. With time, this item was picked up by several metalware companies producing en masse, e.g. the Viennese company Lenkwerk. They, in their catalogs, they still call them Seder Schüsseln, although it has nothing to do with a single bowl. Instead, there are different étagère plates for the matzot and a carousel for the Seder components. When looking at the price in the catalog, it becomes clear that even this unprecious white metal Seder compendium was quite expensive. In 1928, this model cost 162 shilling, which would be around 715 euros or 2,875 skelim in today's spending capacity. Also, the still famous Württembergische Metallwarenfabrik, WMF, produced silver plate Seder compendiums. In the catalogue of 1891, there is a cabinet-like compendium for the first time, and a second étagère-like version first appears in 1898. You can see both models down here. Meaning this item must have been so popular that the company saw a profit in putting a second model on the market. Probably the second one was used with a curtain. In 1807-08, the model number 1, the one on the left, in silver plate cost 96 mark, which would be around 672 euros in today's spending capacity. As the prices go, these Seder compendiums, though not in real silver, were upmarket items not everyone could afford. One of real silver would have been significantly more expensive. As the WMF had subsidiary companies in today Poland and Austria, one can find the same objects with different hallmarks, as this example in the Viennese Jewish Museum on the left, by Albert Köhler and Company. Here one can spot the Hebrew engraving in front to look after the matzot, and on top the trias of Pesach, matzah, and maror, but note the writing mistake in the word matzah in the middle. To compare, this famous Seder set, designed by Friedrich Adler and produced by the company Bruckmann und Söhne, made in full silver with ivory details and a glass plate. It was created in 1911. In this year, the plate cost, just the plate without the bowls, cost 460 mark in the production, which would be around 3,040 euros in today's spending capacity. Also, this example is of full silver by the company Gutgesell, although other Hanau companies created very similar items. The plate on top is well known, as there are a lot of modern replicas around. We see how the complete set would have looked like on the left, thanks to Theodor Harburger's documentation of Bavarian community treasures. Here the plate on top of the plate is on top of the cabinet-like Seder centerpiece. The plate itself is visually based on Italian faience Seder plate, and the cabinet is in typical Hanau style of the early 20th century with its fruit and foliage decorations. Interestingly, the plate was published, though upside down, in the Fachblatt, a trade journal for goldsmiths and jewelers, to celebrate the city of Hanau as an important center of silverware production in 1922. Oh, I'm sorry. This was a little too early. Bateva Goldman Eder traces the design of cabinet-like Seder compendiums to the 16th century Kabbalistic ideas and Ha'ari, Yitzhak Ashkenazi Luna. To be precise, her argument extends as follows. The arrangement of the Seder components above the three matzot correspond with the Sefirot of the Etz Chaim, following the Safed Kabbalistic ideas. While the arrangement might reflect those ideas, I suggest that these Seder Eparnege or Etagere originate in the bourgeois fashion of table centerpieces closely connected to the change of table etiquettes and serving manners in the middle of the 19th century. Hence, a popular fashion of centerpieces was adapted to the needs of the Jewish families celebrating Passover in style. Just as new technologies, like the bread knife or the easier and cheaper production of silver or silver plate items, had an impact on Jewish ritual objects, other technological developments also changed the function and design of ritual objects. Over time, we can witness a change from oil lamp Chanukiot to candlelit ones. This example is one on the brink between oil and candle use, as one can use both and even candles of different sizes. On the one hand, candles became cheaper, and on the other, the neo-Orthodox movement preferred the oil-lit versions, meaning this is not only an item for dual usage, but also for a wider range of Jewish denominations. To be recognized as a novelty piece with these both functions and to set it apart from the mass of advertisement, it is registered again with a utility patent. It says Deutsches Reichsgebrauchsmuster. This is the number on the foot here. And it says that it is registered with the Imperial Patent Office on the first line. This is an example for technological innovation. As the number of the Deutsches Reichsgebrauchsmuster is also put in the advertisement, it is possible to track down a little more information with the German Patent Office. While the Chanukia was exclusively sold at Max Goldreich, Lindenstraße 51 in Cologne, as it says down here, the utility patent was registered by Adolf Düring from Cologne in 1904. According to the Cologne address book of 1904, Adolf Düring was a plumbing technician and retailer for installations and cooking equipment in Lindenstraße 57. Although this corporation seems to be a local project of neighboring companies, both residing in Lindenstraße of Cologne, they didn't spare the effort to advertise in the newspaper Israelitisches Familienblatt with an accurate technical drawing on the left and overall the utility patent. But there are also more groundbreaking design innovations, as these Hanukkah lamps show. These very peculiar Hanukkah lamps were probably developed by the silversmith Joseph Wilm of Berlin. Obviously, this is an expensive, high-quality silver piece for wealthy upper-class customers. These kinds of lamps are, first of all, round and have multifunctional features. In a publication about the silversmith, 3 types of these lamps are presented. Here they are described as table decorations and that they fulfill religious and profane usage. From a halachic perspective, these lamps are somewhat odd. First of all, the lights are not arranged in a straight line, but in a circle, whereas the Shulchan Aruch specifically states to arrange the lights in a straight line and not in a circle, so they don't resemble a bonfire. I doubt that Joseph Wilm knew about a specific responsum from Iraq allowing around Chanukia when the lights don't resemble one single light. Besides, these lamps were not meant to be put in the window or by the entrance, as the Shulchan Aruch states, but as the accompanying text explains, they are table decorations. This use reminds us of the Seder compendiums and might be understood as a festive table centerpiece of its own. Beside its parts can be dissembled into a silver salver, down here a fruit bowl, which is the middle corpus, and separate candlesticks. Hence also to be used for profane decoration as a multifunctional piece. However, interestingly, the Shulchan Aruch also states that in time of danger, when one is not allowed to perform mitzvot, it is enough that he places it on the table. So might this little addition have to do with its kind of design? Although it is round in form, it will definitely not look like a single flame or a bonfire, but is still somewhat problematic. Nevertheless, there are at least 3 designs of this type of Chanukah lamp by Wilm, which were published in the journals of the Fachblatt for Jewelers, the Dekorative Kunst, and the Deutsche Goldschmiede-Zeitung. Hence, there must have been at least some kind of interest and success. The publication in trade journals probably encouraged copying and reproduction. It was picked up at least by Osthaus Jewelers of Münster in Westphalia, and this example is today in the Spertus collection in Chicago. This jeweler and gold and silversmith still exists today and was and is specialized in Catholic clerical objects and were purveyors to the Holy See in the late 19th century. The Osthaus example in the Spertus collection, though, is the only surviving item of this kind I know about. Maybe these candelabras were later not identified as Chanukiot, or as they could have been dissembled, it is probable that some have been preserved in their individual parts as fruit bowls, serving tablets, and candlesticks. Hence, between 1900 and 1913, the Chanukia undertook several changes and innovations. These innovations of Chanukiot must be seen in the context of increased popularity of Chanukah as a holiday during the consumerism around Christmas time, as Gideon Roiveni pointed out. Some of these innovations were very successful, as the change to candles. Others remain a little bit of a mystery, as the multifunctional round Chanukia as table centerpiece. The last item I want to talk about are Jahrzeit lamps. The Jahrzeit lamp, or Ner Neshama, is based on the phrase, "A man's soul is the candle of God," in the Proverbs, but is not mandated by the Halakha. This advertisement from the publisher and bookshop Jakob Brandeis, here on the right, situated in Prague and Breslau, from 1912, states specifically, "Are you still using a regular drinking glass as a Jahrzeit lamp? This is not very nice and impious. Instead, use our newly specially created Jahrzeit lamp." In 1929, the Austrian company Königslicht on the left is pointing towards a similar direction by employing the term hygienic Jahrzeit lamp, since a drinking glass might be unhygienic. Interestingly, the ad stresses that there is a high demand for the lamp. The novelty aspect was also used by E. Lazarus from Berlin in 1910 on the left-hand side. The depicted glass is specially created for this purpose, and that the light is so beautiful it can be kept and exhibited in the cabinet with all other ritual items. Again, we can see the shift from a common glass to a specific item to be used as a Jahrzeit lamp. Additionally, these items are a piece of pride in the household, among other ceremonial objects. Similar to the challah knife, the Jahrzeitlicht is one regular item newly dedicated to a specific ritual use. Both creations date around 1910. Interestingly, the advertisements are primarily arguing with hygiene and style and less with religion. After the creation of a specific Jahrzeit lamp, the next innovation in mass-produced lamps were the electric Jahrzeit lamps. Though one might suspect this to be an invention of the late 20th century, the German Jewish periodicals already advertised them in the late 1920s. Here's one on the right-hand side from 27. This ad not only praises the lamp as being very atmospheric, and its cost in power consumption of being only 1 Pfennig, it also mentions that the piece is gesetzlich geschützt, again protected by a utility patent, making sure it is recognized as a novelty piece. A little more expensive in its power consumption of 2 Pfennig a day is the electric Jahrzeit lamp by Alfred Muscatblatt from Leipzig in 1930. I could spot an example of this on the, here you can see it on the right, in the collection in the Frankfurt Jewish Museum. Interestingly, like the first Chanukia I have showed, which is designed and patented by a plumbing technician, this piece's maker, Alfred Muscatblatt, was an electric engineer, meaning both were neither related to arts nor professionally to Judaism. A new step to set a Jahrzeit lamp apart from the mass-produced electric lights are, so to say, celebrity-designed Jahrzeit lamps for charity. This example by the famous women's rights activist and Freud's NAO, Berta Pappenheim. It was sold shortly after her death in May 1936, also to commemorate her, and the accompanying text to this Jahrzeit lamp from the Blätter des Jüdischen Frauenbundes in September 1936 explains that there is no need now to simply use a regular drinking glass as a Jahrzeit lamp, as this is as fine as Shabbat candlesticks or a Hanukkah menorah. Her engagement with the arts as a collector and a patron is already well known. Her collection of laces famously forms the stock of the Museum of Applied Arts in Vienna, and the famous Lazarus Posenwitwe set of Torah ornaments she gifted to her brother is exhibited in the Israel Museum. But she was never acclaimed as a designer. In Berta Pappenheim's last month, and after her death, the all-girls school in Neu-Isenheim she founded suffered from intensive persecution by the NS government. That is why the profits of this Jahrzeit lamp were used for the upkeeping of the school in Neu-Isenheim until it was burned to the ground in the pogrom of 1938. The accompanying text describes the lamp to be formed as an apple. But because of the fragmenting lines on its side and the opening of the top, I would rather argue it is a pomegranate or a rimon as a basis for the design. Famously, the rimon is a representation of the mitzvot, fitting to the aim of the school to educate the girls in Jewish traditions and values. Berta Pappenheim created and sold her Jahrzeit lamp in cooperation with Posen & Posen in Frankfurt. Posen & Posen was a spin-off company of the company Lazarus Posenwitwe. Probably their focus was more on modern design compared to the Lazarus Posen company. The Jahrzeit lamp, designed by Berta Pappenheim, is a great example of this modern approach by Posen & Posen as a modernist design in collaboration with a well-known celebrity. Hence, single-use Jahrzeit lamps are also a newly newly developed item from around 1910. It became a must-have of one's cabinet or a range of ritual items. Besides, about 15 years later, it was reinvented as an electric device, evidencing a high capacity of innovation. As I have shown, several ritual items were newly created in the late 19th or early 20th century. Some of them have their roots in bourgeois culture of Central Europe or the German-speaking realms, as the cedar centerpiece. Some were based on inventions that were adapted for specific religious use as challah knives or electric yahrzeit lamps. Other inventions, like the multifunctional Hanukkah, are probably a way to spark interest in Jewish customers, perhaps even without a deeper knowledge of Judaism, on the side of the silversmith, and maybe also on the side of the customer, i.e., more secular sphere of German Jews who might be celebrating Hanukkah, but as a social dinner party. But most of them, whether they're real silver plate, or white metal, are upmarket items for the petite bourgeoisie to the haute bourgeoisie. These novelty pieces are to some extent the epitome of this era. Novelty pieces catering for the increasing consumerism, which was initiated by new technologies of mass production. We should also keep in mind that around 1900 was a time of increasing social mobility. The growing petite and haute bourgeoisie were new target groups for the commerce. Hence, ever so new novelty pieces were of high demand. This is even more so for the German Jewish community, especially after 1871, when German Jews gained legal equality. That's probably the reason why also non-Jewish manufacturers and companies discovered the newly Jewish bourgeoisie as potential customers, meaning the invention or reinvention of new must-haves catered to the need for the Jewish bourgeois customer who in one way or other followed religion. That is why some aspects might also cater for the needs of the neo-orthodoxy who, e.g., prefer to use oil lights for the Hanukkah. It is mostly hard to find out how successful these commodities were. One opportunity is to see how many items survived the havoc of the Shoah, but considering the melting down of metal items, this only gives us a rough idea with approximate numbers at best. We should also keep in mind the multifunctional Hanukkah who might be around in its individual parts. Most of the creations, especially when there were several models of the same item in the production range of a company, were probably based on initial success of these items, mainly because most of them are still around today. Overall, Jewish ritual items of bourgeois background reflect the tension which members of the newly established Jewish middle class probably felt. On the one hand, they aspired to be a part of the bourgeois German society, which necessitated assimilation and integration. On the other hand, many apparently wanted to continue with their tradition and practice their religion. Thereby, the objects also reflect a sense of self-assurance. This tension is inherent in these items, which are ceremonial items adapted to the taste and usage of bourgeois society. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. Now we are open to comments and questions. Yes, Marianne.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Hannah. Thank you. It was
Right.
interesting as usual. So I have a question regarding the sources. So, what kind of newspapers do you use, and how do you decide which one to use? Because I guess there are lots of them. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, there is at the Frankfurt University and a cooperation with the Leo Baeck Institute, a great project to digitize these German Jewish newspapers. And I try to focus on the German ones, and I try to focus also on several who have a certain agenda. So there are the more those leaning more towards a German nationalist idea, so they are less religiously, and there are others who are really part of the neo-orthodoxy. These are my main go-tos. Otherwise, there are always also a little bit in between. For example, the specific ones, well, focusing on arts or women's educations. These are very interesting as well, because especially when you look into the household objects, this was still considered being a woman's job, and being the realm and the realm of a women. So looking for these household objects, I also tend towards the women newspapers, so to say.
Okay, thank you.
Annette, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Hannah, for the lecture. We spoke already about these new items. Yes, it's really fascinating, in my opinion. I have two questions. One regarding the cultural environment in which these new items emerged. This is precisely the so-called Jüdische Renaissance, the entire intellectual and cultural movement that started after the fifth World Zionist Congress where Buba exhibited also the Jewish artists for the first time. And it struck me that all these items were created precisely in this phase. Second, the newspapers that you did show, like the Israelitisches Familienblatt and so on, were, to my knowledge, mostly addressing a neo-Orthodox section of the Jewish population. And the neo-Orthodox movement especially started with Samson Raphael Hirsch after let's say, or in the 1860s. And this would roughly convey also with Lazarus Posen's Witwe production, which also offered a range of Judaica to be adapted to a neo-Orthodox household. So I wonder whether this background, the Jüdische Renaissance, as well as the formation of the neo-Orthodox movement, which started from Germany, helped to establish this new fashion of, let's say, an increased Jewish awareness via material culture, which nevertheless has been bourgeois at the very same time, because the bourgeois attire was very much, let's say, upheld by the neo-Orthodox people, especially when visiting the synagogue or celebrating even festivals at home. So they became important events, but likewise in a fashionable, let's say, bourgeois culture. It's this specific mix which was created by the neo-Orthodox movement. That's the first part of my question. The second part, did these items survive? Is there a use documented of these items even after the Shoah?
So to your first question, definitely both of these aspects take place and are very important. Nevertheless, there's also a lot of advertisement in the CV-Zeitung, so it's a Zentralverein, who was leaning towards another direction.
Right.
And according to the Jewish Renaissance, I think that the craftspeople who later on also worked within the Jewish ceremonial item range, they were more inspired by Buber than the companies. Especially when one looks into those mass production companies like the WMF, they use Christian terms for advertising their Jewish ceremonial range. For example, it is jüdische Kirchgegenstände. So no, it's Israelitic church items. They use to market their also their Seder pieces. So I think these were less involved really with the idea of different Jewish denominations or philosophies, but really I think they realized there's someone to sell something to. Yes, this considering your first question, I hope I got that right. And to your second, I looked into several collections of the JCR, the Reconstruction Organization, and there are certain items that survived. For example, I think I've shown, where is it? This one. This is at the Yeshiva University Museum. And some of them, they survived and one can find them. But obviously, most of them were melted down, which is also possible to see in the cataloging of the silver from the so-called Pfand- or Leihhausaktion, where families needed to hand in their silver or their metal, precious metal items. One can find certain pieces there as well. Considering the Reconstruction Organization collections, I have seen that most of these items are from the Austrian realm. There are less German items within those collections, but more Austrian ones, which has to do probably with the time frame when the families needed to hand in their precious metal items.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have another question, but please, I'm don't want to be the only one. If there are other ones, please go ahead.
It's fine.
Okay, if no, I would like to ask another question regarding the manufacturing. You have poignantly shown that these are companies who were interested in marketing success and therefore offered new items. But at well, it's a little bit later, it's the 20s. There we have a new generation of Jewish silversmiths, like, well, the Horowitzes are earlier, and they crafted already also new items for Jewish use, and their father has been an Orthodox rabbi at the Börnerplatz synagogue, who nevertheless advocated renewal, and they crafted significant pieces and marketed them. But in the 20s, you have a new Seder plait created, or later a bit, by Ludwig Wolpert. So he followed this newly established tradition, if you are correct, but tried to rejuvenate it in the so-called Bauhaus style. Are these items still in use today? Do you have any record whether Ludwig Wolper's style, Judaica, are reproduced or reused among families, or has this kind of Seder étagère has come totally out of use in today's Jewish families?
Well, considering that Wolpert established this design shop in the Jewish Museum in New York, probably around there are still some in use. And I also met with people who are still using the modernist creations they inherited today. So I think some of them, or most of them, are still in use. But looking at for example, Hatzofim catalog, these are different today. They are more the historicism and traditionalist idea. But the cabinet-like form itself still is in use, yes. And also the Seder piece, this one from Adler, it was brought to the Spertus collection where it is today by a family fleeing through France, which is actually quite interesting because one can also witness in the hallmarks their flight through France, because the French hallmarked them. So they had to probably pay taxes for getting this into France. And you can see that by the hallmarks that there are additionally French hallmarks on this piece, which is very interesting. I hope that answered your question.
Well, I'm curious whether these type of innovations, let's say of Judaica, has any following object tradition into today's Judaism. I know that there are many creations around which are kind of neoconservative or neo-historicist items, and very little of these innovations. And I asked myself, why?
Okay, thank you. Ilya, do you want to comment?
Yes, so first of all, really thank you very much for your fascinating presentation, and it's exemplary research, very interesting and very innovative. I just think now about this phenomenon of marking tableware with signs of religious identity in comparison to other groups of population. And if I think about this similar marking of tableware, so we have many examples of personal identification with initials on tableware, or group identifications here or there, or guilds or so on. It's rarely, but it happened. I wonder, do we know something about other religious marking of homeware or tableware, something like that? It's very interesting. So Christian, Protestant, Catholic, non-Christian, Islamic, so on. Any other religious minorities in German lands? Do you know something about, do you think something about that?
Well, in these catalogs, also Christian items are sold, especially when talking about the WMF, for example. And though the housely goods, so the one used at home, are really few. You have some tiny Weihwasserbecken, it's in German, so for the sacred water, some tiny fields, and there are certain smaller items also in jewelry, of course, but those household goods, so to say, are much fewer in Christian terms, and in those catalogs, the Islamic don't take place, so they are not in there. Another aspect, actually, a friend told me that she was reminded by those Chanukiot, she was reminded of Adventskränze. So the candles, the 4 candles for to be used before Christmas, which are also arranged in a circle. So she was reminded of Adventskränze, so Advent lights. Though these were not items to be sold in catalogs or in metal, these were items or are still items being bought in as a wreath, for example. Yes, there are certain Christian aspects, but these are also less for the homemaker, but more for the churches.
Thank you very much. Really interesting. Thank you. Yes, and I may announce your article on this subject. It's forthcoming. It's really maybe in 1 month you will see it in the next volume of Ars Judaica.
Yes, exactly. It's specifically about the iconography of these items. Thank you.
Annette?
You're muted.
Yes.
I have one other question regarding the advertising of these items within the so-called Fachblätter. That means specific newspapers directed to the retailers, in my opinion.
Yeah.
This is not advertising for a general public, but for retailers who want to sell it to their local customers. So you're right, there must have been a specific interest of a general, let's say, Jewish-minded public to acquire these items, but they couldn't do so directly by going to the companies. They had to go via the retailers. And did these same retailers also offer Christian items in their catalogs? Something like, because the only thing I remember as a household ritual or so-called ritual Christian items are so-called Taufbecher. That a newborn gets a so-called Taufbecher by his sandak or sandeket. And all other items are for the church, where you have the pyxes and the mass appurtenances, and the candlesticks, which need to be present at the altar. So there are very few items of Christian ritual available at home. And I guess it's similar to the Islamic rite also. But if there are Jewish customers, do we have any shop just specified in selling ritual silver, or is it always combined with shops like Posen and Posen selling cutlery to every bourgeois in Frankfurt? They even had a reputation of being the most solid silverware in this town. Or they are sold in the so-called bookstores, where you could acquire any ritual item like tefillin or a talis or even silverware. So are there specific retail sellers of Jewish silverware, just ritual items. Do you know of anyone who does so?
I would add a third one to your list, which are department stores.
Okay, yeah.
Which are very interesting in that direction. But I have witnessed that this jeweler's shop were retailing all kinds of jewelry to silverware, and the bookshop merely catered to a less expensive realm. So there you can find the silver or white silver plate or white metal, but you couldn't find the real silver there. And the jewelers really catered to all kinds of silverware, from the cutlery up to the Chanukiot, as well as did the Horowitz brothers. They also sold regular silverware, not only the Leo Horowitz designs. So there's definitely this connection. But as simply only silverware Judaica, I haven't witnessed any shop doing just that one. Even the Mayan company, so H. Mayan from Berlin, which is today totally forgotten, and they were catered to the wedding present of the crown prince. So they used to have a really great reputation in Germany. They also are catering to both the Jewish ceremonial items, the church items, and also to the regular household goods.
Thank you very much.
And considering the newspapers, the trade journals, the Fachblätter, it is very interesting because there's also an FAQ in each of these papers, where to get certain items for a customer that asked for it. And again, people ask for psmim boxes. And also there are some, for example, they ask for Chanukah lamps, which are probably Hanukkah lamps, but the customer and the trade person didn't really understood each other. So in these FAQs at the trade journals, you always spot very interesting questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, I could go on and on. I have a lot of questions further on. What about the Torah silver? You showed us one WMF announcement where there shield and a rimon can be detected. And I remember having seen at least this type of rimon alive, let's say, surviving the Shoah. So was this company selling Torah silver also to synagogue communities? Do we have any record of that? Because so far I was told it was always via Posen, and Posen had a specific section of his marketing to produce silver Torah items and sell them, or even manufacturing them upon request, like the Pappenheim set. But apparently this is not true as a single truth, because there were non-Jewish silver companies selling Judaica to communities in Germany directly, as this would indicate. Do you have any records of this kind of procedure?
So WMF is very interesting, considering that because they were the first German company starting a range of flagship stores. So a single brand store. And they started that idea in Germany. And they also had one in New York, for example. So it was a huge company. It still is a huge company. And for example, the Torah shield is today in the Israel Museum. Rimun here at the side is today also in New York in the museum. And
There's
there
some
were
image in Würzburg also, I
in
remember.
Würzburg, true, yeah, in
Yeah.
this collection of looted objects.
Yeah.
And well, as they are advertising also their flagship store in German Jewish newspapers, they definitely sold directly as well. And there are certain historic photographs where one can spot these items as well in the Torah Ark, in place in the Torah Ark. And there are several other companies who acted similar. For example, the already mentioned Mayan company, items of theirs are today in Sydney in the museum, also in the Spadus collection. And they were also selling directly, though there are some interesting comments in those trade journals that they actually didn't have the license to sell directly to customers, but they were actually, well, turning and twisting a little bit their licensing. And one can also spot these in historic photographs of the Mayan company. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I would like to ask something. I know it's not the focus of your research, but these items, they change customs. For example, the Hanukkah lamp that is not shown in the door or in the window, on the window, or the memorial lamp. It's electric, and it's usually there is a response or opposition to such changes. Have you searched for such responses?
I have searched for them, though I haven't found any. So if anybody knows about responses, for example, so around Hanukkah, yes, there's this Iraqi responsum. I'm pretty sure that the Christian silversmith did not know about the Iraqi responsum about around Hanukkah. But I was looking also, for example, there are WMF Hanukkah lamps with a Prussian eagle on top. I was looking for those, whether the design of a Hanukkah lamp was ever, well, discussed considering these Prussian eagles, or for example, the challah knives as well, to cut the challah and not to break the bread, whether there are any responsums, but unfortunately, I haven't found any. So if somebody knows, I would be very pleased to see them.
Thank you. Any more questions, comments? Annette, do you have any?
No, I'm going on to discuss it with Hannah in private, because I guess there is such a richness of material and so many questions attached to cultural habits changing right in the beginning of the 20th century. That is really a fascinating topic, and very few people have looked into that matter. It's always discussed, yes, there's a Jüdische Renaissance, and different communities are adapting in different ways or rejecting it, but that there is actually going on also an inside reformation, even or especially at the Orthodox Judaism, that has very little been discussed so far.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah. Actually, a very interesting testimony to that is Jakub Petuchowski's memoirs. He wrote his memories as an elder man and discussed his youth among the neo-Orthodox, or very traditional Orthodox, neo-Orthodox background he was educated of in Berlin. It's really very interesting.
Okay.
The last comment, I promise the last for today. I just recalled rabbinical description of the temple menorah as 6 branches surrounding the central branch, the central stem. Yes, it's very unusual, but we have this in textual sources.
Great. So if you could send that to me, that would be marvelous. Great. Thank you very much.
I must make effort to
Yeah.
to go back to locate the source.
Yeah.
In one of articles on the menorah in written sources.
Great. Yeah.
I will try. I will do my best.
Thank you.
Okay, so we still have time. So if someone wants to add something, comment, ask something, we still have time. If not, it was fascinating. Thank you so much, Hannah.
Thank you.
And I just want to tell you about next week's just a minute. Next week's lecture. Did I find it? I'm trying to find it. So this is okay. Yes, I think that you can see it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so next week, Monica Gutman of the University of Warsaw will talk about images of Isaac in modern and contemporary Israeli art. And they are, of course, all invited. And thank you very much. See you next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Was lovely.